What's up, everybody? Mark with Coffee and Toys here, and it is Marvel Monday. I guess that's what I should start calling it, because today is the day we review the classic G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero run published through Marvel Comics that ran from 1982 to 1994. Yeah, everything that we've come to know and love about G.I. Joe is found in these comic books, and that was the impetus that started all this. Along with the action figures and Larry Hama's file cards, the comic really brought our imaginations to life. So what we are doing on this channel, by the way, I'm Mark with Coffee and Toys, so welcome. I drink coffee, I talk about toys, I review comic books, and just anything that I remember from the 80s and early 90s through my childhood. That's what this channel is about. And today, like I said, is Marvel Mondays, where we go over that Real American Hero run of Marvel Comics. And yeah, today we will be covering issue number 2 of G.I. Joe, Real American Hero. If you haven't seen my review over issue 1, make sure you check that out, because we kicked it off last week. People really seem to like it, so we're just going to keep going through. We're starting on issue 2 now, and we're going to go clear through issue 155, including special missions. So plenty of content that's going to be coming out over the next year, I guess next few years actually, if I manage to keep this up. But that being said, make sure you like this video, drop a comment down below, let me know what you think of this this review of issue 2, because this is one of my absolute favorite issues in the entire Marvel run. Issue 2 is a fantastic story, great character building, great introduction of a new character, Kwinn, that you'll soon find out about, who is popular among G.I. Joe, the G.I. Joe community as a character. And yeah, just to, I guess, to finally show you, I do actually own this issue. This is my readable copy that I actually went through for this issue and reread. It was very, very fun to reread this issue. And yeah, in case you're curious what's in here, this again is the Green Mountain Black Granite Espresso Roast. I'm trying it for the second day. I am going to have more coffees coming up on the channel, just to let you guys know that I do generally drink coffee when I do these reviews, because yeah, I drink coffee most of the day. But that being said, let's jump into issue 2, G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. Okay, I'm going to take a quick drink of coffee real quick. Put it off to the side, and I do have my notes right up on the screen behind me. I guess facing me, you guys can't see it obviously. So if you see me look off to the side, that's just because I'm trying to hit my cadence, make sure I get the right information out to you guys. And I'll probably deviate from the notes a little bit too. But issue number 2 of G.I. Joe, Real American Hero, The Panic at the North Pole, is written by none other than Mr. Larry Hama, penciler Don Perlin, inker Jack Abel, colorist Bob Sharon, and editor Tom DeFalco. So we do have a new artist, a new penciler on this issue. It was Herb Trimp was on the first issue, and now this one has changed over to Don Perlin. But yes, so an interesting thing to note that I noticed when I first started this that I had never actually noticed before. The cover states that the issue is called The Panic at the North Pole. However, when we start with the first panel of the comic, it actually does just say Panic at the North Pole, so they drop the off the name of the issue. So I thought that was kind of interesting and kind of made me scratching my head wondering why they did that. But we start off with the Army investigating a military base at the Arctic Pole. This base has been destroyed, raided, all personnel are dead, and some vital records are missing. We find out that the nearest town or base or whatnot is 100 miles away, and it's actually a Russian base. And so the Army colonel that is actually on site is talking back to the Pentagon with General Flagg and General Austin, and they're trying to figure out if the Russians would actually have committed this raid, because they're the nearest people. But the generals and the Army colonel are kind of talking about this would be a major snafu for the Russians to do something this drastic, this obvious, and this stupid. And so General Flagg says, well, let's bring out the G.I. Joe team. And General Austin says, sounds good. Kind of feel bad pulling them off their R&R right now, but hey, we got to do this. So they select 4 individuals that are going to run this mission, and we cut away to Stalker, and we see that it's a blurry image of a deer, and it slowly starts to come into focus, And you see like the target crosshairs, and Stalker's like, okay, I've got you, I've been tracking you. And then this heli comes down and scares the deer away. And Stalker starts yelling. He's like, I can't believe you guys did this. I was going to get the perfect shot. And then it shows a panel of Stalker actually with a camera, and makes you believe that he was going to actually out hunting, but he was actually hunting it in the sense that he was looking for the perfect picture. So they have come to retrieve Stalker. He is off R&R now, and he needs to report on this latest mission. We cut over to MIT, and we see Breaker in front of a computer terminal, and he's got his classic, he's chewing his bubblegum, blowing bubbles. And there's two ladies off to the side, and they're just kind of oogling him, saying, oh, he's so cute, and he always comes here on weekends and works on this analysis on these computers. And they're talking about maybe asking him out on a date, and when they look back, he's gone. And on the terminal, we see R&R canceled, report back to the pit. And so that is where Breaker has left. So we now have two members on this upcoming mission, Breaker and Stalker. Moving on, we show Scarlet. She is at a martial arts tournament, and she is actively competing when the MP comes up and basically says, hey, Scarlet, you need to drop what you're doing. You need to come with me right now. You've been called back for an active mission. Scarlet says, okay, and she stops the actual match. She's beaten the woman that she was fighting in the martial arts tournament, and she's walking away, and this woman tries to attack her from behind, and we get this really crazy picture of Scarlet just jump kicking this girl right in the mush, and to me, I thought it was pretty funny. It's a fun panel to see. Scarlet just lays this chick out. Finally, we cut to Columbia University, and the MP comes to pick up Snake Eyes. And he walks into this room, and there's some scientists in the bottom of this area, and there's a sensory deprivation tank. And Snake Eyes is inside. And so the MP's rattling on it with his baton saying, you need to come out right now, it's time for active duty. And Snake Eyes appears, and this is the first time we see Snake Eyes without his mask. Now granted, we just see the back of his head, but based on the reaction of the MP, he's like, oh, that face. And Snake Eyes gets geared up, and he has now been called into this same mission. So we have our mission team set of Stalker, Breaker, Scarlet, and Snake Eyes. And we cut to them actually being flown over the Arctic. They're given their primary mission objective, which is the recon of the Russian base that was 100 miles away from the American base. And the secondary objective is to retrieve the missing records that were in the American base. They are not to engage. It is stressed. If you are engaged, pull out, mission abort, done. We are not going to rile up the Russians. They parachute out and later set up a small tent to do their recon of the Russian base. 6 hours later, they finally spot an Eskimo with his dog sled coming up, and there is a 30 cal on it. And they quickly realize that this is no ordinary Eskimo. He actually goes into the Russian base, and a few minutes later, he walks out and just leaves the door wide open. So the G.I. Joe team goes in to investigate, saying, surely there's nobody there if this Eskimo just left the door wide open. They go in, they find out that the Russians were working on a low-frequency beaming transmission that could interfere with human brain functions. And everyone inside is deceased. They're not sure what's going on. And furthermore, this transmission that they were sending, an important piece, a modulator, is missing. A safe's been opened, and Breaker's like, yeah, this piece is missing, and obviously that must be what the Eskimo took. During that, Snake Eyes senses something's off, and he notices a bomb underneath a table. He kicks the table over. The Joe team escapes the Russian base as it explodes, and they basically say, okay, we need to report this information of this Eskimo up to General Flag and find out what the issue is actually going on. So they send out the information, and many miles later, Breaker's teleprinter, part of his backpack gear, comes back with information on the Eskimo. We find out his name is Kwinn, and he works for the he works as a mercenary. His personality profile shows that he always completes his job to the letter, fulfilling any contractual obligations. So that will come into play a little later in the issue. It's also worth noting that Kwinn is 6'10", 260 pounds, so a very large man. As it gets dark, the G.I. Joe team finds this wrecked plane with a fire camp around it, or a camp around it, and they see what they believe to be Kwinn. As Snake Eyes approaches, he puts the gun up to the Eskimo's head and finds out it's actually just a stack of C4. Kwinn bursts out of the airplane, pointing his weapon at them. He has the detonator and he says, "Drop all your weapons now, or I can just leave a huge crater where we're all standing." So, as they're throwing down their weapons, throwing down their packs, their gear that they've been carrying with them, Kwinn tells them that the Russians were using the beam transmission to create fear waves and were sending those over to the U.S. to hopefully instigate paranoia in citizens. However, the shielding on the transmitters leaked and the Russians wound up getting paranoid themselves. They got so paranoid that they actually were the ones that raided the American base and killed everyone over there. And then when they returned back, their heater broke inside of their base. And at that point, they were, as Kwinn says, they were too far gone to be able to replace the broken heater, and they wound up dying themselves. So Kwinn says, "My job, I've been hired by the Russians to come back here to take the American intel and the modulator piece back to my contacts, which will get them back into Russia. That is my job here." And Scarlet says, "Well, why are you telling us all this?" And he basically says, "You're going to have no gear. You have no weapons. You will be dead in a matter of hours. You will not make it to the next day. That is why I'm telling you all this information." And Kwinn leaves. So the G.I. Joe team basically says, "Hey, whether we die or not, our job is to complete this mission." Again, that motif of G.I. Joe always finishes the mission first. So they are going to figure out a way to follow Kwinn, and they actually start scrapping the airplane and using the unused parachutes, any wood and metal materials they can find, and they actually build an ice boat. And they are going to use that to get ahead of Kwinn, because Kwinn is going to assume that they're dead, and that gives them the advantage to actually catch up with Kwinn, because they will travel very fast while Kwinn will just go at his normal speed. It's important to note that he did mention that he is meeting with his two Russian counterparts at noon the next day, and it is now at this point early morning, still a little dark outside, and the Joes are going to try to catch up to him. So the Joe team catches up, and they actually wind up getting ahead of him. They say, "Okay, there's this huge ice passage with an ice bridge on top. What can we do to cause this thing to crater down and stop Kwinn cold in his tracks, so to speak?" And Snake Eyes pulls out of his boot 2 ammo clips that didn't get away from Kwinn, and it's like, wonderful, we can use that. And they actually take the gunpowder and the primer and they pour it into the Stalker's canteen, and they construct this. They take a big block of ice or rock and they have it hanging up on this. Basically, they scrap the ice boat. They've got it kind of in a lean-to or a type device. The rock's in the middle, and Stalker says, "Okay, when he comes underneath the ice bridge, we'll cut the rock. The rock will detonate what's in the canteen, the primer, the gunpowder. It should be enough to cause this ice bridge to break and stop him in his tracks." They do so. As Quinn's coming, they execute on their plan, and it does actually work. And so they go in to stop the Eskimo, and turns out Kwinn has tricked them again. It actually wasn't the sled that was going did not actually have Kwinn on it. He stayed behind. He shows up with his 30 cal, and he's kind of like, "Haha, I got you again." Scarlet comes out of nowhere and drop kicks Kwinn in the back of the head and barely phases him. He makes the comment, "Quinn's fought bears and won against bears. A little woman's not gonna be able to stop me." In the meantime, Snake Eyes is going for the sled because that is where their weapons are at. Remember, he had them remove all their gear. Snake Eyes grabs another clip from his boot. So Snake Eyes must carry a lot of clips in his boots. Must be very difficult to walk. And he slaps the magazine into the gun, points it at Kwinn, and it just goes click. And nothing really happens. And Kwinn laughs and shows that on his weasel necklace that he had actually removed all the firing pins from their weapons so that they could not shoot him. And he actually says, "Yeah, I did this as a charm to protect myself from gunfire." And it actually turns out to have worked. So moving on, Kwinn tells the team that they're going to die soon, and he doesn't take pride in this assignment that he has. He says fear is something that helps you survive. It should not be something that is being used by any government to induce this paranoia and be used as an actual weapon. But he had a contract, and Scarlett's like, well, why are you telling us all this? And he says, I have a contract, I have to fulfill it, and I don't like it, but I'm just going to have to. And so about an hour later, Kwinn is at the coast, and he's meeting the Russians. He turns over the modulator and the intel and basically says, I need you guys to tell me, like, actually verbally say, I have fulfilled your contract. And the Russians are like, yep, great. And he's like, okay, I'm out of here. I'm done with you guys. I don't want to be here when G.I. Joe arrives. And the Russian agents say, well, what do you mean when they arrive? And he's like, oh yeah, they're on their way right now. They're about 5 miles out. And of course the agents are all flustered. They're like, you turned your back on us. You. And he goes, no, I have hindered them every step of the way to keep them from getting here. And he goes, as a matter of fact, like I said, they are 5 miles out. They have unusable weapons. You have everything you need. All you have to do is either wait for the sub to get here and hope G.I. Joe doesn't make it, or I have left my necklace with their firing pins on it as an offering to the spirits. It is 1 mile away from you guys. They are 4 miles away from the pins, 5 miles away from you. And I think he says, actually, I think I have it quoted down here. He basically says, as Quinn's leaving, he says to the Russians, you're a mile away from it. They're 4 miles away from it. But they are trackers and you are not. And the final 2 frames of the issue show the G.I. Joe team with their weapons, and Snake Eyes is wearing the weasel necklace that no longer has the pins in it, indicating that they have retrieved all their stuff, including the pins. The pins are back in the weapons, and they are heading for the Russians to retrieve the modulator and the American intel. And that's it. That's the end of the issue. This issue is fantastic. Again, like I said, it's one of my favorite issues I enjoy reading of the entire Marvel run. We're introduced to Kwinn, and I should say a lot of people really love this issue. A lot of people love Kwinn. Kwinn is a great character. He shows up a few more times in the comics, I believe. It's been a while since I've read the comics. Normally, the Kwinn issue I always read is issue 2. And a matter of fact, Kwinn is such a beloved character. He didn't get an actual action figure until the early 2000s when they were creating the comic book 3-packs. That's the first Kwinn character we actually ever got in action figure form. And it came with a reprint of issue 2 because that issue is so iconic in the G.I. Joe universe and the community. And yeah, it's just a fantastic thing. We get to see the issue talk about, they were on R&R, they get called back to active duty, and we get to see what G.I. Joe can do. And we get to see that G.I. Joe, there's some missteps. They try to get ahead of the game, and Kwinn is very, very smart. And you'll see that with Kwinn. He's always seems to be one step ahead of the Joes. Luckily for the G.I. Joe team, he's not so much a bad guy. Not really an ally, but not really a bad guy. Just kind of one of those in the middle sort of characters. But again, a fantastic issue that teaches a lot about Kwinn. We learn about Snake Eyes being disfigured and why he's wearing that mask. We know he works with sensory deprivation. We learn more about Scarlett's martial arts skills. We get a fun fact that Stalker likes to, take photography. I actually did check his file card just to make sure that wasn't some little hidden thing in the file card. It wasn't mentioned. But very cool to see that as well. And that Breaker, is a regular at MIT. So showing his very high intelligence. Fantastic issue. Drop a comment down below and let me know what you guys thought of issue 2 of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, issue number 2, Panic at the North Pole, or The Panic at the North Pole. But with that being said, I'm Mark. You've been watching Coffee with Toys, and I'll see you soon.